guys. How are y'all? Good. How many days of school left are there? Anybody know? How many? 5 Mondays? I have 27 days left. I'm not counting down at all. I've been counting down since like 45. I'm ready for summer. So tonight, I want to tell y'all a story. Have y'all ever heard of like someone saying like, oh, that's a God thing, or oh, like I've had a God moment, or something like that, like your parents or one of the leaders or anybody ever said like, oh, I had a God experience, like a God moment, a God thing, something like that? I want to tell you about mine that I had a couple weeks ago. So about 3 weeks ago, I was sitting here at church on a Sunday morning listening to Pastor Roland talk, and he was giving an amazing lesson. I had my journal out, I was taking notes, all of these things, and he said something, and it like triggered something in my mind. I told y'all during the Back to Basics series, during my prayer lesson, that I've been praying for something, right? For over a year now, I've been praying and praying and praying, and I'm not going to tell y'all what that prayer is until God answers it, right? I told y'all that. Well, I just felt like the Lord was saying, am I enough? Staci, if I don't give you this thing that you have been praying for over a year, very selfishly, might I add, because to be completely honest, I haven't been praying for God's will. I have been praying for God's purpose. I've been praying, this is what I want in my life. Like, this is what I want, and I want you to give it to me. And I just felt 3 weeks ago on a Sunday morning, Pastor Roland was given this sermon. It had nothing to do with identity or anything like that. But the Lord said, Staci, am I enough? Y'all, I don't know if y'all have ever been humbled by the Lord, but oh my goodness, he humbled me that day. So I began in my journal, not listening to Pastor Roland anymore, but writing down notes. Am I enough? Is God enough? Who am I? Who does God say I am? What does the world say about me? What do I think about me? This whole lesson about identity, I began writing, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know why God laid it on my heart that day. And to be honest, church ended. We went about our day. We went to lunch with a big group of people. I forgot about it until the last week of our Back to Basics series. Eric and I were at home. We were just talking. He said, I have the next series planned out, but I think I'm going to push it back because I really want to do a series on identity. And we hadn't talked about that. I didn't tell him about this experience that I had that Sunday a few weeks ago. So that was a really cool, God laid it on my heart to talk about it, God laid it on his heart to talk about it. And so that's why we're doing this series. He started last week with talking about identity and materialistic things, right? He showed that picture of his Ed Hardy t-shirt. You have a picture of that? And that he talked about that big flat screen TV, right? That's what he wanted. Those were his materialistic things. So this week we're going to be talking about outward appearances and how our identity is not rooted in our outward appearance. So if you look up the definition of identity, it's literally just the fact of being who a person is. It's who you are. And our identity shouldn't be rooted in those materialistic things, right? That Eric talked about last week. It shouldn't be rooted in our outward appearance, what I'm going to be talking about tonight. It shouldn't be rooted in our past, which is what we're going to talk about next week. So tonight we're going to start out in Luke chapter 6. I think the Bibles have already been passed out. If you don't have a Bible, there should be some in the back. But if you'll turn with me to Luke chapter 6, verse 6 through 11. It says, on another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And a man was there whose right hand was withered. So on the Sabbath, it's considered like this holy day, right? You're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. It's a day of rest. So Jesus enters the synagogue and he's teaching, and a man, and I love Luke's attention to detail in this, his right hand, right, was withered. And it doesn't specify how it was withered. Maybe he was born with a birth defect. Maybe he got in some sort of accident and hurt his hand. It doesn't say specifically why his hand was withered. but his hand was withered. And verse 7 says, and the scribes and the Pharisees watched him to see whether he would heal on the Sabbath so that they might find a reason to accuse him. So the scribes and the Pharisees, they don't like God, right? They're trying to come against Jesus. They're trying to find something that he's doing wrong to accuse him, to kill him. That's their purpose. So they're trying to figure out if he's going to heal, which they will consider work. So that would be, they have this religious rule that you can't work on the Sabbath, so that's what they would accuse him of. That's what he would be doing wrong. So verse 8 says, but he knew their thoughts, and he said to the man with the withered hand, come and stand here. The Lord knew. Jesus knew what they were thinking. They didn't have to say anything. He knew that they were thinking about all these things and planning to accuse him and to do awful things to him. And he still told that man, come here. So the man rose and he stood there. In verse 9 it says, and Jesus said to them, I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save a life or to destroy it? So Jesus looks straight at them when the man comes to him and asks them, is it lawful to do good or to do bad, to save a life or to destroy it? And after looking all around at all the people, he said to them, stretch out your hand. And he did so, and his hand was restored. So in front of all these people, knowing exactly what they're thinking, Jesus boldly still healed this man with the withered hand. Verse 11 says, but they were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. So now they're planning. What are they going to do? How are they going to kill him? Now that he's committed this dumb crime for this religious rule that you can't work on the Sabbath, what are they going to do to him? So what does this have to do with identity? I'm going to tell you a story about my life. I know some of y'all might have heard the first part of it a couple years ago when I gave my testimony, so just bear with me, because you have to know this first part in order for the part that we're going to talk about tonight to make sense. So I was born with a disability called spina bifida. The doctors, my parents, nobody knew before I was born that I was going to be born with this. Back then, 27, 28, I forget how old I am, I don't know. Years ago, they didn't have all these tests, right, that they do now. And so when I was born, it wasn't this like joyful, happy moment that it was supposed to be, right, after a baby's born. It was, wow, there's something wrong with her. We need to get her to the other hospital so she can have surgery to save her life. So my mom didn't get to hold me. Like none of that was like how it was supposed to be. I went straight from Bay Area to Driscoll Children's Hospital to have my first surgery. So the doctors, they came, my neurosurgeon came in, he talked to my parents, he explained what spina bifida was, what was happening, what he was about to do to hopefully save my life. But he said, you need to prepare yourselves because she might not make it. But obviously I'm here, right? So I like to think that God has a sense of humor, right? So I just picture him in this moment being like, I got this. Sit down. Let me work. So then, obviously I live. So they're like, okay, she lived. Whatever. Now, she's probably not going to walk. She's probably going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. So you need to prepare yourselves for that. And again, what'd God say? I have other plans. Sit down and watch me work, right? So then I'm living, I'm walking, God's like doing all of these miracles in my life. And the doctors say, okay, she's walking, weird, but she walks. But she's not going to live a normal life. She's not going to be able to do things that other kids her age do. And again, God said, yep, sit back down, watch me work. Thank you. So I told y'all during my prayer series, or my prayer lesson during the Back to Basics series, that I grew up in a very Christian household. If I wasn't in the hospital having surgeries, I was in church. I was in church every Sunday, every Wednesday. I was on fire for the Lord. I loved the Lord. He was doing all these miracle things in my life, right? Until my 6th grade year. The summer before I was in 6th grade, I found out not only do I have spina bifida, but I have scoliosis. And it's so bad that no brace is going to fix it. You have to have surgery right now, or your spine's going to curve around and damage your organs. It was that bad. So me and the Lord got in this little fight because I was mad because they were taking away kickball. I loved sports. I loved to play kickball, and I loved to raise pigs. Those were my things, and all that was going away. The doctors were finally right, I felt like. And so me and the Lord had a nice little chat, and of course he won, because he always does. But I went through this time where I was mad because all these things were taken away from me. But I had a good support system, I have good family, I have good friends, I had a good church family. So I got my walk back with the Lord, like right back on path where I'm supposed to be. Me and Jesus were cool until my junior year of high school. Has anybody ever told y'all that when you're on fire for the Lord, when you're living your life how you should be, Satan hates that, right? So he's going to attack. Well, these things in life were happening. Life was throwing me curveballs, like trying to get me off path of the Lord. My 6th grade year got me off path a little bit, and I got back on. My junior year of high school, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I had 7 surgeries within 5 months. I missed like 60 days of school my junior year. I was never in school that my junior year. If you do the math, that's a surgery like every 3 weeks. So I would have a surgery, I would stay in the hospital for a week, I would get out and go home for about 2 weeks, go to my like post-op checkup appointment, and it would turn into, oh, something's not right, you need to go back to the OR right now. It got to the point where my parents and I literally had our bags packed in the car, ready to go all the time, because I was going into surgery at any time. So I went down a really dark path this time. I was really mad at God now, right? Because I was in pain every day. I didn't feel good. I wasn't in school with my friends. I couldn't live my normal life. I was mad. So I began to root my identity in other things, right? I began to listen to the world, listen to the lies. People, I told you earlier, I walk weird as a joke. People have always stared, and that never bothered me. I don't care. They're curious, whatever. My identity is not rooted in the way people look at me when I walk. But in my junior year, in the darkness, it began to bother me. The little stares, the little comments, the little laughs, that began to bother me because I was in this dark place. I was no longer in the light with the Lord. I don't know if they still have it, but when I was in school, in the cafeteria, on the right side there was like the lines to like get your food. And then in the middle is where like the upperclassmen would sit. It was called the pit. And there was like this brick wall around the pit that was like waist high. And then all the lower classmen sat off to the left. So I was going to get my lunch one day, and I put my stuff down at the table that me and my friends always sat at. And I went to go get my food. Well, there was this guy in the pit area, so we were like, there was a wall between us, so we were sitting there talking. And he had asked me to homecoming, and I said no because I was in this dark place, and boys were the last thing on my mind. I didn't have time for a relationship right now. So anyway, I went and got my food, I went and sat back down at the table, and I was telling my friends that I just got asked to homecoming, and my best friend in high school looked at me and said, "Did he see your feet? Because I used to wear braces on my feet. I still should be wearing them, but I don't. That's another story." Shut up. So, anyway, she looked at me and she said, "Did he see your feet? Did he see your braces? Did he see the way that you were walking?" That was her response to me getting asked out to homecoming. We're no longer friends. We could sit here all night long and I could tell you story after story after story after story of things in this dark time that bothered me, that now they don't bother me. I don't care. Because now my identity is not rooted in those things, right? So I convinced myself in this dark time that I wasn't ever going to find anybody who was going to love me. I wasn't ever going to get married. I was never going to find a man. I was never going to be loved. I was never going to be taken care of because I was unworthy of it. That's how I felt. And this went on for years, y'all. This happened my junior year of high school. It went on my junior year, my senior year. I skipped my freshman year of college because I was, yet again, having surgeries. My freshman year and my sophomore year of college. 5 years I was in this dark place, and nobody knew. I was so good at faking it. I was so good at putting that fake smile on and pretending like everything was okay when it wasn't. But I was in this like dark depression, this deep thing, and I felt unworthy of love, and I was all alone. I was going to be all alone for the rest of my life, and that's just how it was going to be. But there was one day I was sitting in church, and for the very first time, remember earlier I told you that God humbled me 3 weeks ago? He asked me, am I enough for you? That was the second time that God's asked me that. The first time he asked me that was my sophomore year of college. I was sitting in church, and he said, Staci, am I enough for you? If I don't give you a man, if you never get married, if you never find somebody that's going to love you, take care of you, all of these things that you desire, am I enough for you? If it's just me and you, is that enough? Because I love you, and I want to take care of you, and I will love you more than any man on this earth will ever love you. Is that enough for you? So I slowly began to crawl my way out of this dark pit, right? And that fire for the Lord came back slowly. I was going to church. I was doing Bible studies. I was getting my walk back with the Lord. Y'all, when I told the Lord that he was enough for me, it took 1 week. That next week, I was in Sunday school in my college class, and who do you think came walking in that door? That guy. 1 week after I told the Lord that he was enough, and I was okay with it just being me and him for the rest of my life, I didn't need a man, he brought one to me. He fulfilled that desire that I had. And yes, I love Eric, and we have a great relationship. We have a great marriage. But Eric doesn't own my identity either. My identity is not in him. It's not in my marriage, right? My identity is still in Jesus. I am who he says I am, not who the world says I am, not who Eric says I am. I'm who God says I am. My identity is not rooted in this disability that I was born with. My identity is rooted in his ability, right? And your identity, it's not rooted in the material things that we talked about last week. It's not rooted in your outward appearances that people may make fun of, that you may not like about yourself. It's not rooted in your high school or middle school relationships, in your boyfriend or girlfriend, and who they say you are. It's not rooted in your friendships, who they say you are. It's not rooted in your home life. Maybe you don't have a good home life. Maybe mom and dad are divorced. Maybe mom or dad are not in the picture. Maybe they have bad opinions of you. They don't get to identify you. The Lord does. Your identity is not rooted in sports. It's not rooted in drugs. It's not rooted in alcohol. It's not rooted in sex. It's not rooted in anything but the Lord. Do not root your identity in your outward appearance, but in who God says you are. Let's pray. Lord, we love you, and I just thank you so much for bringing each and every one of the youth here tonight, Lord, all of the students, all of the leaders. Lord, I thank you for just allowing us to come into this place and freely worship you and to grow in you, Lord. I pray that as we go into small groups, that you just open our hearts and our minds and our ears and our eyes, Lord, to you, and that you just speak to us, and we just grow in you, Lord, and we know that our identity is rooted in you, and we can identify ourselves as a child of God, because that's who we are, Lord. And Lord, we love you, and we just thank you so much. In your son's holy and most precious name we pray. Amen.